You're listening to the Conference Board of Canada's Mental Health and COVID-19 series with Dr. Bill Howatt, Chief of Research, Workplace Productivity.
Hi, Bill Howatt, Mental Health, COVID-19, Conference Board of Canada. Welcome to yet another week. So clearly I'm passionate about mental health and I worry about mental health. And one of the things I do when I try to pick topics for this is to consider where society's going and what kind of things are bubbling up, I should say, that are things that if we're going to be as leaders and if we're going to be employees, we're going to be paying attention is to pay attention to what's happening to people. One of the things that's interesting, if you've developed mental health strategies, if you've been a part of mental health strategies, is often we don't spend much time talking about suicide. So perhaps one of the challenges is we sometimes might think if we talk about suicide, we're going to make things worse, and that's not the truth. If you think about the Center of Suicide and Prevention, that's an offshoot of the Canadian Mental Health Association. I was reading an article over the weekend from them saying that, the ingredients for increase in suicide is here. Some pandemic creates all kinds of challenges: uncertainty, job uncertainty, financial, people worrying about the future. And today, what I'm going to talk to you about is suicide in the realm of not making you an expert in this. This is not going to be counseling. This is not suicide intervention. This is general awareness. I think we need to be mindful and pay attention to some of the ingredients that are less obvious that can actually contribute to suicide. For example, increase in alcohol and drug use. Well, we know alcohol's increased about 150%. Feeling helpless, not worried about your career, your job, stuck in social isolation, not around your normal social connections, not around your peers, not having the same connections. Increase in anxiety, people worried about catching COVID-19, worrying about disease, worrying about what does the future hold for them. Agitation, people getting tired. People are even outside who can be a little bit irritable to each other. You can see more conflict and challenge, and I'm hearing more about it. Not being able to sleep, unable to sleep, your brain's running and worried. Again, feeling trapped. Again, this isolation, being locked in a space where you're not sure how you can get out. Withdrawal from your family. That's, because it could be voluntary, involuntary. Some of this could be created by the condition. Some people might feel, because they're feeling isolated and not being able to cope with that, may end up retracting and not engage in social connection activities such as this meeting or picking a phone up. Driving, acts of recklessness, taking risks. You'll see some people are driving faster than they probably should. So not paying attention, being a little bit more risk-taking. And dramatic mood changes, people moving back and forth. Now, isn't it interesting when you think about the list I just went through? These are all normal things that people are going through in a pandemic. People are amped up. People are more tired. One of the things is to be paying attention to symptoms that people are having, and they're not always obvious. It's not always that people are going to come up to you and say, I'm planning on hurting myself. That may or may not happen, but their pattern of behavior may start to give you an indication that something is not right. And if we start observing trends, we'll talk about the prevention part in a minute. Now, T. The T stands for talk about. I am a big proponent when we're dealing with mental health is not to avoid tough topics. If we talk about it, we can educate people, because just because people in challenging times don't know the answers does not mean there's not an answer. When people are feeling hopeless and they don't believe there's anybody that's feeling like them, they may get stuck in their head, and that can actually impact their frame of reference, what they think their potential for the world is. By us talking about it and normalizing that in tough times, people may have suicidal thoughts. A big difference between having a suicidal thought, such as, geez, I wonder why I'm even trying anymore, to actually starting to make a plan. When we're under stress, automatic thoughts that come up out of our unconscious brain aren't filtered. But when we're stuck here and we don't have an ability to actually filter, that's not healthy for me up here, that's not an option, then that can become a petri dish. These ideas can start to migrate. So it's important for people, if we educate them, if they start having suicidal thoughts, if they start questioning their life. We'll talk about what we can do in regards to the prevention. The O, I believe organizing some education and some training for people that are in positions such as leaders and frontline leaders to understand how a frontline leader can facilitate an early intervention. You don't want a manager trained in doing suicide intervention, but you certainly want them to be able to early identify and be able to get them off into the pathway of help, or to know what to do if someone says, I'm thinking about killing myself or thinking about hurting myself, so that they're not paralyzed. They have a frame of reference also to prepare them so that they don't take it on themselves. I spent 30 years doing this, and I've heard people tell me they're going to do terrible things to themselves, terrible things to other people. And what happens is, if you're not trained, you can start taking this stuff on. So we don't want you to become a helping professional without the proper training. But suicide intervention is a technique we've trained frontline people. There's certifications out taking suicide intervention. It's just knowing how to intervene to pass someone off to someone like myself who's trained in working with a person who's thinking about killing themselves. So some education is good, and talking about it. So letting people know in a pandemic like COVID-19, normalize that people, if they're having a hard time. We need to not stop this concept that we're out of this pandemic. I'm hearing this, watching people are getting moving a little bit too quick. And what I think they're going to find, if we don't slow down, there's going to be some frustration, because all the jobs and all the economic and all the challenges that are to come, we don't know what the fallout is yet. If this thing is supposed to take 18 months, which hopefully it doesn't, and we're 2 months into this, and you can feel the vibration and how people are feeling, and you see that mental health, went from 20% as an issue in people to 50%. We got to pay attention. With increased mental health challenges, there's risk for more suicide. It's just a natural fact. And we can't, by putting our heads in the sand, is not going to help it. If you're in a position of authority or have a chance, try to influence it. The next step is a P. The prevention is to realize is that having people talking about it, having the following, for example, in your phone, having the National Suicide Hotline number 1-833-456-4566, or the text 45645 written down, so that if someone is in trouble, you're not wandering around looking for. Preparation and readiness is sometimes our best prevention. Part of what I'm doing this talk today for is, don't be surprised if someone you hear about or know ends up committing suicide. Will it be a tragedy and a grief? Absolutely. Will it be something easy to get through? No. But I'm telling you right now, myself is that this is a conversation that I believe we need to have with people, especially that are facilitating leaders and etc., understanding the fragility of human behavior. Because remember, even when we had before COVID-19, we had, whether you remember or not, because I haven't told you, but in case you didn't know, there was around between 10, 12 people committing suicide a day in Canada, and about 200 to 250 attempts. That was a typical day. Christmas season is higher. Right now with COVID, from my reports, it's starting to increase because lots of folks are worried about their financial health. How high that will go, purpose why I'm talking about this is, let's talk about it so we can prevent suicide and save some lives. And because through communication, person has spent their entire life with mental health. I know early intervention, I know talking about this stuff and helping people normalize that they're not alone, because it's interesting, it's called coupling theory. When people get hooked around an idea or in a space, if we can, by intervention, can sometimes uncouple them, can help them. That's one of the reasons, for example, real quickly, if you think about San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, amount of people that killed themselves there. Well, they've learned what's called uncoupling, that people at that moment in time that thought about killing themselves, if there's a net there, they don't do it there. It doesn't mean they're necessarily going to go to another means. So it's important for you to understand is when a person is that moment where they're at that critical point of thinking about it, if we intervene and help them, that doesn't mean and stop them by helping them uncouple from that situation. Many times they may be very grateful, and they may never end up being involved in another incident. Yes, there's people that will attempt many, many times and etc. But that is the exception, not the rule. So suicide, we know a lot about how to help people, and we know if we can get them and stop them early and get them uncoupled or away from that situation, their chances of success are fairly high. So again, I'm fairly passionate about mental health. This is a hard topic, but it doesn't have to be a scary topic. It just needs to be something we talk about. That's my point of why I'm having today's conversation with you. So with that, I'm going to wish you a good week. We'll have, lots of positive talks, and however, we are in a pandemic and mental health is important, and there's good and there's bad, and we can't afford right now to avoid the bad because people's lives are dependent on it. So with that, again, have a good day. Best you can. Enjoy it. Looking forward to continuing the process of having these conversations with you. All the best. Hi, Bill Howatt here. Hopefully you're finding these videos of some value. If you'd like to share these, on the lower right of your video, there's a icon you can click. You can send it through your social media feeds. Join the Conference Board of Canada social media feed so we can keep you up to date. And if you have ideas, suggestions, please leave your comment so we can consider them. And if you have things that you'd like us to speak to, I certainly will try to do all I can to help out. With that, have a wonderful day.